government employees the way they were dressed, and had patches and name tags on. So I introduced myself to both of them, showed them my commission card, asked them for theirs, and we had a small discussion about what they found in there. They did find the site. He claimed it was a rendezvous site, and Mr. Kurz did all. I asked him to explain what a rendezvous site was because I wasn't familiar. He told me what it was. I asked him how many wolves that they had found in there, and he didn't answer. I asked who the female was, and he didn't answer. And so I told him we were going to go down there and find out for ourselves. And he cautioned us against that, said it was a long travel back in there. There were a lot of blowdowns. It would be hard to get back in there. And I said we were still going to go anyways to find out. Again, he cautioned me against that, and I told him, well, you can appreciate the fact that we're going to go in there and find out whether or not there's a risk to public safety, because everybody we talk to won't tell us anything, including him. Won't tell me who the female is, won't tell me how many wolves they saw, won't talk to us at all about it. And that's when he confirmed that she said she didn't want to be named because of the risk of or the threat of potentially her safety. So I said, okay, well, we're going to go anyways. He said, well, I wanted to tell you from, I don't remember if he said supervisor, I can't remember. He can tell you that. But he said, I want to tell you from my supervisor that this could potentially be construed as harassment to a federally protected species. I said, well, you can tell your supervisor, and that was it. That was the basis of the conversation. I can give you my opinion on that.
Sure.
With a failed attempt to keep us in to find out what was going on. What the threat to an endangered species is. I know that it brings prison time. I know that it brings a fine. I'm a guy carrying a gun and a badge just like every other law enforcement around here. And all we want to know is whether or not there's a threat to the public safety. To tell us that no, there's no threat, it's way back in there, nobody ever goes in there, it's a long ways back. That trail is just as well cut out as the one on the south side. When you get way back in there, no, it's not. You have to go down and around some, I won't call them cliffs, but it's not well cut out. Let's just put it that way. But the first like 2 miles is well cut out. There's campsites back there. There's signs that have, say, camping chair in there. There's fire pits in there. I mean, it's well used. We saw 3 different sets of tracks, minus these gentlemen's tracks. So to say that nobody ever goes back there and it's not a threat to public safety, we were up there the week prior to that. We probably ran into 30 different people when we were there. We have cameras up there on some of what we call our coke trails on the border for our drug task force guys. We ran into probably 30 different people up there. There was wolf scat right in the middle of the road. So to not communicate with us about what's going on is an issue. We're not wolf killers. We're not wolf hunters. We're supposed to. And so I take offense when I go up there as a law enforcement officer to find out what's going on. And somebody have a failed threat that I might end up in prison or I might get fined if I go in there. That's ridiculous at best.
Thank you.
Commissioners, again, my name is Donnie Martorell. I'm the Wolf Policy Lead. So I'd like to start first by thanking all of you and everybody here at the table for having me in the department here. I want to also echo what the sheriff said, that looking really to on our role here and working with all of you, see all of you as partners, every jurisdiction in this room, and to kind of work through this. This is an unusual incident, and several agencies and organizations converged on this, and we can do better. And so I just wanted to thank for the opportunity to start through this process, so that if something like this happens again, that we can do better. So Steve, sorry Steve, I don't know your last name. So Steve Brown, Mr. Brown walked you through a lot of the details. I'll kind of just share, rather than repeating that, kind of my involvement in it. On that, the day of the incident, close to 1 o'clock, I believe, I got a phone, I was on the phone, and a DNR fire manager came to my office and said there was an emergency situation, I need to talk with you. I said, absolutely. So he came in and explained the situation. At that point, This was 5 minutes old maybe, or 10 minutes old, I don't know the exact time. But there was, at that stage, and I'm not law enforcement at all, but it was very clear that there was misinformation already floating around. At the beginning, I thought it was the Teanaway pack, I didn't know there was a Lip Loop pack. And so when this gentleman described the situation to me, that a woman was in a tree and there were wolves there, I immediately picked up the phone with him in my office and called Mr. Kurz, Greg Kurz, and handed the phone over, had it was on speaker, and Greg and this gentleman spoke about the incident. Gave the green light to send a helicopter. And my next phone call, as soon as that phone call was over, was to Commissioner Hover to let him know what was going on. After the fact, and so at that point, I'm thinking it's actually a different pack. And so it's just misinformation. And after the fact, I started getting pieced together a situation where there was this message where the Department of Fish and Wildlife, other staff in the agency, local staff here, said, no, don't send a helicopter. So I just wanted to flash backwards now to describe that content to you. So the Mr. Brown was describing was on the phone with one of our officers in the background. That woman in the background is an experienced wolf biologist and worked with wolves in a couple different states, and was describing that when folks, whether it's on wolves or public or anybody else, when they get close to a wolf den site or a rendezvous site, wolves will kind of do the alert, and they're telling you that you're too close to their pups. So a common thing that we hear is, Commissioner, go ahead.
Donnie, can you tell us what a rendezvous site is specifically?
Absolutely.
And I was wondering if you would also, for a den site and for a rendezvous site, can you give us the time frames that,
Yes.
if I were to walk up on a den site, what time of year am I looking at? Hey, these are happening, and then explain what a rendezvous site is.
So Wolves Den, essentially, they started somewhere around early April, maybe a little earlier, and they den in the ground, and they're at that den site through early summer, and they stash the pups in the hole, and adult wolves come and go as they go find food and bring it back and feed the pups, etc. So if you think about the activity of wolves, think about the center of the tire of a bicycle being the den site, and all the spokes of the wheel being those travel paths of wolves coming and going. Kind of midsummer, June, July-ish, they go to what's called a rendezvous site. Now their pups are old enough, they're more mobile, and so the pack will gather the pups, then move them off to another site that's, you can't predict, it could be anywhere, and they'll stash the pups, like a wet metal complex or something like that. They'll stash the pups at a rendezvous site. That's just where they stash them, tell them to keep quiet and shut up, and wolves go out and hunt, and they'll be around that rendezvous site for several weeks. Then they'll go to a second rendezvous site, and they're just moving throughout their territory, and maybe they'll use 3 or 4 rendezvous sites until the wolves are old enough to start hunting with the pack. So when those pups are, like many wildlife species, when those pups are smaller, alarm. They'll bark, or they'll vocalize, or they'll make themselves known. They're essentially trying to put themselves in between what they perceive as danger and their pups. And so wanted to tie that back to some of the early context of the Department of Fish and Wildlife saying, no, don't send a helicopter. It was in the context of coming from somebody who has lots of experience with wolf behavior, saying, oh, they're close to a den site or a rendezvous site. The best course of action here is to just back onto the area. And so they were trying to coordinate how to do that, reach this woman on a sat phone or hike in there, whatever it was. Within minutes of that conversation is when I got the call, called Greg Kurz, and it was really an understanding at that point. Again, it felt like a little bit of chaos there for 10 or 15 minutes, where it was understanding, no, if it's a woman in the tree and she's calling for help on a sat phone, send the helicopter. And that's, of course, the green light that Greg gave, and I called Commissioner Holder immediately after.
Donnie, it's my understanding from radio transmissions and stuff, that recordings that I listened to, that Jill at Newey made that decision and overrode the agency and said, I'm DNR, you're a different agency, the sheriff's called for a helicopter and a rescue, and I'm sending a helicopter. now you're trying to tell us that Mr. Kurtz gave the green light, and I don't think that's true. I think the helicopter was dispatched by that lady at Newick, despite what you guys are trying to tell us.
Commissioner, I don't know those answers. I know that.
Well, we're gonna find a timeline, and we're gonna
Yes.
put this together, we're gonna piece it together, because, I'm with the sheriff. You know, I'm deeply disappointed, and I'll use his quote, pissed about this whole deal. You know, and you may continue, but I just wanna make that one point. You know, we're gonna put this timeline together. To say that you guys now, after the fact, oh yeah, we're the ones that sent the helicopter, I don't think that is the case.
Yes, Commissioner, just so that, so we're all making the same connection. So what your point, indicating is, was the helicopter already in the air when I had called Greg? And it may have been, or I don't know the answer to that question. But I know that as soon as I heard it, this is an area where wolves are listed under the federal ESA. I immediately called Mr. Kurtz, knowing that they're the lead agency.
So, follow-up question,
Yes.
why do you two communicate, and you don't communicate with our sheriff?
That's
Or
good.
you don't communicate with us as county commissioner, who have invoked coordination on you guys on this issue several times?
It's a good question. I don't know the sheriff, and I think through this kind of getting to know each other better, that I absolutely would do that. That was the point of my, literally seconds later, after hearing an emergency situation, connecting that individual with the lead agency, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, not the state. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service giving the green light for the helicopter. Within seconds, my next phone call to Commissioner Hover and I think you weren't aware of the situation at that point.
I wasn't aware of it, no, and I think that when you called me, she had already actually been extracted and was at the airport.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
Yep.
Okay. So that's, wanted to share all of that, and I'm here to sort through those things and look to see, how do we do this better? What is the kind of everybody here around the table, the department does, and how do we coordinate that so this is not this kind of snafu if this were to happen again?
Mr. Reed?
So, as the sheriff talked on Thursday, July 12th, we had a seasonal Forest Service employee that was preparing to do some stream monitoring surveys on the Okanogan-Wenatchee National Forest on the Tenasket Ranger District. And she encountered wolves, which is a federally listed species, on the west side of the Okanogan River. So I think it's important to maybe talk about the difference in Okanogan County between federally listed and in state, because the Tenasket District, the privilege of having two sets of kind of rules that we go by. So I'll let Greg and you guys want to just talk about east side, west side of the river and management and coordination of what that looks like?
So before you continue on that, I have one more question. When this woman was extracted, and the sheriff says, I'm on my way, I want to talk to that individual, why didn't from your office meet her at the helicopter and whisk her away? If the sheriff asked me that I'm being involved in some kind of an investigation or an incident, to wait there, why did you guys whisk her off? It's on the defense, and they won't give her name, and they won't tell us what she was doing there, and, you know, we hear all kinds of different stories and rumors, and, you know, some of the stuff that we got back, and I haven't been able to verify it yet, because I haven't talked to any of the pilots, but she had tracking equipment on her, telemetry equipment on her. But my question is, if you know the sheriff wants to talk to her, why does one of your employees whisk her away?
So I'm not aware that the sheriff, I didn't know that the sheriff wanted to visit with her.
It was a deputy.
We were,
Deputy,
so that
I'm a
request,
law enforcement officer.
so we were unaware of that request. There was one of the employees that went to the airport to pick her, to take her back. She was, she was trying to get herself feet settled after the incident that she had, so she was trying to get herself together. I'm unaware that request was made, and if it was made, we certainly would have visited with you about it. I mean, you were the.
Well, we sent, Steve had, our detective, head to the airport, pilots were there, she was gone.
Yeah,
We're
so,
only from here to the airport.
so I didn't know that there was such a request. I wasn't there, but aware there was such a request to do that. So, we certainly appreciate Okanogan County's Sheriff's Office assistance in this search and rescue operation. We went through our protocols, we went through our Northeast Washington Interagency Coordination Center, Jill Jones, center manager there, contacted Okanogan County, asked for assistance, and we had gotten approval for the helicopter use from our forest supervisor, Mike Williams. He approved that, and as far as we understood, that's what was gonna happen. And the sheriff's office was gonna be the lead in that operation, which you are in search and rescue. So we provide any assistance to whoever the lead is for that. And we're very grateful. The outcome was a very positive outcome. So, I look at what was the plan was to go and rescue this person from the situation that they were in.
So can you lay out, Ranger Reed, the employee had a satellite phone, correct? And that's the only way that she could have got communication.
So the employee did have a satellite phone.
Okay, so who did the employee call?
The employee called their supervisor.
Okay, and then what did their supervisor do?
The supervisor called the Tonasket Ranger District.
Okay, and the Tonasket Ranger District then
Called Northeast, our coordination center, and our coordination center calls the office. That's how our plan is.
Okay,
He's correct on this, when the Forest Service was called, they notified New, get a hold of sheriffs if this is a search and rescue per us.
Mhm.
okay,
Same they did do.
okay, and then, so how is the DNR, our helicopter then?
That was my understanding, it was a DNR helicopter that was acquired, through conversations with cooperators to use for that mission.
Okay,
So I'm looking at, as an after-action review, what was the plan? So our plan was to rescue this person, utilizing Okanogan County Sheriff's Office. That was our plan. So the next question you ask yourself is, well, was that plan implemented? So from our standpoint, from the Forest Service standpoint, we felt very good about that. We felt like we had a good plan. Sheriff's Office assisted us, like they've had in the past, provided us with that avenue to do that search and rescue mission, and the search and rescue mission was.
so who ordered the helicopter though? And the reason that I ask this is because we're running into a situation that is very new and that has some very strange nuances to it. Okay, we have an employee, a Forest Service employee who is lucky enough to have a sat phone in an area that did not have cell phone coverage. Okay, so I'm trying to go, okay, if this happens again, and this is, my mom and whatever hiking down the trail, same exact scenario, wolves, I don't know what to do, I'm gonna get up in a tree, and I'll have to drive out and call 911, because that's what you do. Okay, it's gonna go to directly to the sheriff's department. Okay, so who ordered a helicopter to go get her?
So that order was handled through Newark and through the sheriff's office to secure the helicopter, to get out there, to get that person out.
Okay.
May I speak?
Sure.
I wish, and unfortunately Jill's not here, because she could fill in a lot of these blanks. She was the one that did all that communication, and so, I don't know if she was invited or not, but she's not here. Newick to Washington Fish and Wildlife, to Officer Troutman. And that was denied by Fish and Wildlife. And I have her CAD comments here. I could read them word for word, or you can ask her herself. She claims that was denied 3 different times. And again, I wish it sounded like to me when we were communicating that Officer Troutman may have been taking that position based on the information that the biologist was providing him. And that he didn't make that decision on his own, which is unfortunate, in my opinion, as a law enforcement officer, life and safety first, over any wild animal. But she wrote that in her CAD comments, that offer had been given to WDFW and they said no rotors, absolutely no rotors. And so eventually what she says was from the Forest Service, that approval from USFS supervisor to fly if needed, but request has to come from the sheriff or SAR first. So we agreed with that. Get the helicopter in the air and go get this girl. It says next, I got the okay from Schmidt. Sorry, I don't know who that is. Sat phone contact with Ranger District so she will know what the plan is. Per Aaron Schmidt, I approve and support Newick's mission for the rescue. Talked to Officer Troutman, said it's not a search and rescue since she is not lost and he can respond. Completely WDFW jurisdiction. Also clean up in Weissmavir as they are denning. This is from Jill Jones. Told her I didn't know any of this information and gave her Betsy's phone number. Left a message for Officer Troutman. He didn't answer his phone. Launch the rotor. We'll go talk to the director. WDFW, do not engage, just fly over. This is again from Jill, says we have launched her if it's their call. It is FS ground. We agree. Launch the rotor and we'll deal with WDFW later. So that communication was going back and forth between Newick and WDFW. And again, unfortunately, in my opinion, I think it was just bad advice from a biologist to an actual law enforcement officer who should have just said, put the helicopter in the air. This later.
Schmidt is DNR's lead guy on their all-risk team. I sit with him on the Wildland Fire Advisory Committee that answers to the Commissioner of Public Lands.
And what I just read came from Jill Jones's CAD call comments as she was on the phone.
So could we go back to an explanation about management of wolves, east side, west side? We could do that?
Sure, you guys can start a discussion. I'm gonna bring something that might be pertinent.
All right.
So I'll dive in on that one first. So, pretty short here, and I'll pass it to Ray. So wolves are naturally colonizing Washington from other areas, mostly Idaho, some from BC. They are state listed for the entire state as an endangered species under state law. That doesn't mean that there's not management of wolves. For any circumstance related to public safety, a person can always defend themselves. And also under state law, we have authority to remove wolves as needed for other reasons as well, for interactions with livestock and impacts to ungulates. So, but they are in a recovery mode under state law and increasing each year. I'll just pass it over to Greg on the federal side.
So west of the 97, 17, 295, 395 line, is federally listed as endangered. All the wolves west of that line are federally listed as endangered. So in that area, we're the lead agency for responses on wolf. All the wolf monitoring is coordinated through me. Most of the on-the-ground management, because we don't have a big wolf like they did in the northern Rocky Mountains, we rely on WDFW support from their field personnel to be our first responders for that, to conduct investigations for livestock depredation stuff. When there's questions about that or they need verification, then they call me in and I come and help provide that assistance at that point.
And make sure, no matter where you are in the state, you have the right to defend yourself.
Always.
With lethal force.
Always.
Against the wolf,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
So that includes yourself, does it include your pets?
No.
Yes, it does.
Yourself?
Under the castle doctrine, which is also part of what Andy is referring to, you can protect yourself and your property, and that is considered part of your properties, your pets and your livestock. That doesn't say that in the wolf plan, but under the castle doctrine in the state of Washington, that is legal.
So I would have to rely on Mr. Ashburner back here to answer that question. I'm not a law enforcement guy, but it was my understanding that is in defense of yourself or other humans.
In the wolf plan, but under the castle doctrine, that's, you're all gonna get a copy of this when you're talking about what's going on. I drew this map about 4 years ago when we're having serious conflicts in Stevens County. For those of you who can't see it, I titled it Part of the Insanity. It's a picture of Okanogan County. Highway 97 bisects it. On the east side, they're federally delisted and state listed on the north half. On the Colville Indian Reservation, there are 9 kill permits. You cross over to the west side and they're federally listed, and you cross one more boundary, which wolves know no boundaries whatsoever, to the Canadian side, and you got 10,000 wolves, and a lot of the times there's a $350 bounty on it. So, this whole wolf issue is, in my estimation, at best, insanity. You may continue.
So you have jurisdiction, west side of 97.
Yes, we're the lead agency.
Everything is your call, everything has to go through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, not Greg Kerr's, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, prior to approval for an on-the-ground type situation for the WDFW to engage in anything, correct?
Usually that's how it goes, yeah. That's why Donnie gave me the call, to make sure they're gonna get sideways with the ESA by them flying a helicopter over and potentially disturbing the wolves. When I heard that there was a woman in a tree, there's wolves, there's a helicopter available, the DNR gentleman was on the phone with Donnie, I said, go.
And that decision may have already been
May
made
have already
by
been made,
someone
right.
that just decided that the life of an individual was way more important than the ESA listing, and just said, you know, helicopters go on.
Okay, just so everybody's on the same page here. Her first call for help was at 12:18. We didn't launch a chopper until 13:03, which is 1:03. We're talking almost an hour. And as you can hear, there's more of what Steve read, there's a question. This is the whole thing we're talking about from our end, that this went on for 45 minutes. Nobody's making a damn decision. Part of that decision, I mean, I hate to, I'm not trying to throw anybody in the bus here, but I'm saying that, you know, the Forest Service, feds, the state, that's your bailiwick, that's your wolves. Like Steve said, we're not hunting these things. But I got a citizen that called for help. That's it. We wouldn't even be sitting here today if somebody just said, send the chopper, we'll coordinate with you, we'll meet you there, and we resolve it. We would not be sitting in this room. And I get frustrated when I hear, you know, we're gonna upset the wolf. Christ sakes, you know how many fires we've had in this damn county? We got aircraft and choppers flying everywhere. I mean, you know what I'm talking about? Everywhere we got choppers. This was a gal calling for help. we're all trying to work this out and smooth it over and keep everybody happy, and that's good. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, because you gotta resolve this issue. But somewhere this whole thing got dropped. All right, I'm sorry. Was not an honor. As you guys realize it, because you deal in other counties, you have a lot of cattlemen. These wolves affect them a lot. So when we have this kind of an issue, how are they supposed to sit here in this audience and believe you? That's the trouble. Sheriff, that's the issue I have with it. You know, we're trying to build a trust, build a working relationship with everybody. These guys want to trust you, and then this kind of stuff happens. And it creates issues. You know, for me as a sheriff and the next sheriff coming after me. And then for these commissioners sitting up here. So I don't know how we resolve that.
So Frank, you know, as we talk about after action reviews, we talk about what was the plan, what happened, and then what would you change based upon that outcome? So based upon the outcome that we had in this circumstance, what would we change
I'm
for
gonna,
that?
I'm gonna change the train of thought right there. The outcome was good. It was the initial that was bad, because I've seen transcripts and heard the, communications, and the left hand doesn't know what the right hand. We have to call to get authority to do this. You know, who's the person in charge? So the outcome was great, but it's trying to get to that outcome sooner,
Mhm.
because we were in a situation where the lady worked for the Forest Service. She was nimble enough to climb up 30 feet in a tree. She had a sat phone in an area that, and I'm not, I'm just iterating these nuances. She had a sat phone that was able to communicate with the outside world in an area that does not have cell phone communication. Her supervisor was then able to call an agency that directs air traffic to get her out. So this, just the goofing around, it took an hour to get the helicopter. Okay, now what if that is, again, Joe Blow in the tree, and somebody has to drive out, make a cell phone call, and they're in there for, you know, for hours and hours and hours. And that's kind of that's what I am hoping comes out of this.
So Andy, your question is not so much the outcome, it's the process. How could we improve the process? So if in fact we do have a circumstance like this again, how is that process shortened so we can continue to have a good outcome?
Well,
Is that what you're?
Where things don't seem fishy.
but let me interrupt, because we're missing the point still. You're asking me what we're looking for the after action plan, okay? You guys were fine. You said, Ellie, it's right in here. It says this is not a USFS issue, this is a search and rescue for the sheriff's office.
That's right.
This thing continues down, then it says this is not a search and rescue. So now you see where we're getting the confusion part of it. What I'm trying to say, the after action plan is just everybody work with it. Simple fact is, if we have a cow, any kind of cow gets killed by a wolf, like I said, Dan Christensen in the back there, he's on the phone. We made an agreement years ago with us, state game, the cattlemen, we all sat down together and agreed. If there's a cow gets killed by wolves, call in the experts to do their job, but we send a deputy up at the same time, so that it's all documented, we're there, it's just one of these quicker things. You guys are still gonna do your job, but we just kinda work together. What I'm getting at is, this was a female calling for help, doesn't matter, like Andy said, if it's anybody for help, we all go. We should've just worked the same thing. Simple, there's a helicopter coming in, great, we're done, you guys keep doing, we'll respond, we'll send somebody to the airport, because you're missing what the after action plan is, exactly what Steve said, was our concern is public safety. Is this an area we need to be concerned about? If guys had met us there and said, hey, look, this is what it is, it's a den, this is where a rendezvous site is, at least we would've had something to work with. These guys know more about the area, how many people, it's like, okay. And then is that something state puts out and says, hey, you go to Montana hunting, my God, they tell you there's wolves, grizzlies, there's all this crap running around out in the woods that are gonna eat me. They just tell me flat up, you wanna come here and hunt, go for it. Just keep your head out of your ass, because you're on the food chain here. Don't seem to do that in this state. I don't know, so you got wolves up here. All right, if you're hiking around the damn Tiffany's, be prepared. That's all. I'm not trying to yell or be frustrated, but I am frustrated. I feel like we're just sitting here beating this thing to death. I get the wolves, we know they're protected, we know all the species. It's just, there's a lack of trust in this room now. And this is the kind of crap that leads to it. You know, you can build this thing up and get it really good, and then all of a sudden it takes one incident, and now we're right back to square one.
The lack of trust has been broken by your agencies, not just in this situation. I can tell you time after time after time, I get calls from ranchers, or I get calls from people, frankly, all over the West, that say the bias towards the wolf runs so deep in the agencies that the first thing out of their mouth is always, what wolf? Can you prove it? But if you take a picture of the wolf in the act, sometimes they'll say, well, that's not concrete evidence that they did the depredation. So what I'm saying is, this after-action review, we can resolve that between the agencies. If you guys would do the coordination when we ask for the coordination, that's simple. But the problem that leads up to that, and I'm gonna go to your boot to the pack. I know the permittee that runs his cattle up there. He has 80 head, he's got a lot more, but he has 80 head of fall calvers that calve out in the 30-mile area. For the past 15 years, out of 80 head, he comes in with 78, 79, or 80. You guys have any idea how many he brought in last year? 17. And when he talked to the Fish and Wildlife about it, is what couldn't be the wolves. That's the only thing that's changed in the last 15 years, for him to lose 85% of these fall calvers that he's sent out. So this denial is where the trust breaks down with the public and these agencies. It's because it's always protect the wolf at all costs. And the Sheriff Rogers and Detective Brown's point in this situation, they are correct. In law enforcement, their very first thing is human safety. And when they get denied, it's because it ever buildup of all of this type of stuff. Donnie, you know, you were involved with the McCurvins, and they get death threats constantly. They lose 100 cattle a year to wolves. But it wasn't until you actually got a death threat, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, that you really, your eyes widened and opened up and decided, gosh sakes, this stuff does happen. So I'm just frustrated, and I had a conversation with a guy that sits on the game commission last night for about an hour. And I'm not gonna divulge his name, but he said, I sit on the game commission and I'm constantly frustrated about deny, and not giving us the accurate information, sitting on the game commission, that the agencies do not give us the full truth. That's the problem that we're dealing with. And it just so happens that our law enforcement people caught you guys in with your pants down. And
So
it's just,
Jim, I'm gonna have to add a piece into that, is you were there when we had the conversation at our spring meeting with that permittee.
yes,
And that was the first time that information was passed along to us.
Yeah.
You saw my reaction during that meeting.
yes, I did.
And I said, this is the first time you've mentioned this to us. So can there's losses, so we can go out there and verify that. So, you know, we take that very seriously. I take it very seriously. So it's sharing that communication in a timely manner. So just as what Frank was talking about, if we have a loss out there, if we have a depredation, got a plan. We have conservation measures in place, we can follow that. We all have to be on the same page and be talking to each other, and it can't be information that's shared 7 months later, oh, by the way, lost X number. For me to take action, or for these guys to take action on that, that's really hard.
I sat in that meeting with you, and that was the first time I heard it, but
Yeah.
here's the point is, when I talked to these people after the fact, they said they've watched what's gone on in Stevens and Ferry and Pend Oreille County, and I told this to Director Unsworth in a private meeting with him over in Olympia. I said, you know, you county underground, because they don't want to be treated like these other people have been treated. So that's why people don't say anything. They just zip their mouth and pray to God that, you know, they're not the next person. And that's where we are today, and that's the crux of the problem as I see it.
Steps to improve the, and with the producers as well, because I'm gonna talk about this particular issue that you highlighted right now. We're taking steps now to visit with the state, to visit with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to have those conversations with producers and provide those conservation measures to those folks where there are, you know, we have known packs. So they know measures you need to take, you know, and this is the pathway. So exactly what Frank talked about, if we have something, we're gonna do this, 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 and this. And it's all laid out, we've got a good understanding, and everybody understands. So we're having those real frank conversations with producers right now. In fact, before I came to this meeting, I had a conversation with a producer in an area, handed him a copy of the conservation measures and said, I want you to really look at this. I gave him Ellen's number. I said, I want you to work with Ellen because she's really a good person. And she's really working hard, you know, for the state. And so I want to assure you that as agencies, we're trying to work together to try to work with producers to get that word out so we don't.
Whoever he, she may be, to be one of the first people that are called to say, hey, this is what you got going on in your county. Wolves out here act differently than any other animal that's out there. Okay, if I'm walking down the trail and I see a black bear with cubs and she starts popping her jaw at me, what do? I turn around and I'm gonna go the other way. Okay, she's not that territorial. Cougar come along. Okay, they're not pack hunters. I know what to do with a cougar. You know, try to get as big as you can, try to scare the thing away. 50-50 shot, you never know. People in this site, and there are multiple animals, one front, one in back. What do? You climb up a tree, okay, so lucky. So we need to have and it says, hey, grizzly bears will kill you. You know, here's what they look like, don't do this, do that, do. I mean, we need to have some of that type of communication here now, based on what just went on, to let people know, hey, these animals are territorial. If you start hearing, you know, if you hear whatever, probably back up. You know, whatever that may be, whatever that sign may be, to let people interpret what's going on. Because that's the thing that we're missing, is that we just have not had wolves on our landscape long enough for people to have that innate of, oh yeah, if I start hearing a bunch of barking, I probably shouldn't go towards it, to figure out, oh, what are they barking at? You know, that's the sign, hey, you know, pull up and get out of there.
Yeah, over the past couple of weeks, Matt's staff Me, the folks at the supervisor's office there in Wenatchee have been getting together, trying to go over what kind of information already exists out there on signage from Montana. We're not finding a lot put together on wolves, so we're trying to assemble something and get something that can be posted at trailheads, at kiosks. There's pamphlets from the Western Wildlife Outreach on wolf behavior and what they do and how you should behave in response, that we're trying to get so they can stock them at the ranger stations for folks to have in hand. But trying to find a better way to get that information out there to folks so they know how to behave and what to expect when they go out there.
So I mean,
Just might add to that, you know, oftentimes when we have problems, for instance, with bears, it might be an isolated place. And so there's this sensitivity, I understand here, to this fact that there's these wolves. You might not know that they're there. And it's not common for you to be able to just go, hey, we know there's wolves in the area. And I don't see that happening. I don't know if it will. But there's wolves in the area, we know that. We've been having problems with bears, we know that. And then people are warned about it. In this particular case, you know, maybe a rendezvous site, but it's clear to me that we want everybody to know about it. And we have people out there that, so I don't think you had cell service out there, did you, Steve? No.
No.
And you won't. And so, you know, I don't know if it's common, the employees with staff.
It is common when they're working by themselves.
Right.
They'll either have a satellite phone or they'll have a spot send messenger. One of those two. It's one of our protocols.
So but in a way, you know, I mean, they're afforded a safety, a factor or a safety to me. I don't think you can fish in the creek, but if I wouldn't have, then I wouldn't be able to call. And certainly, over the years, I have not ran into wolves before, never. And in fact, to this day, till it's just plain communications and the roles the law enforcement plays. And that's a real critical one to me right now, is because I really feel that needs to be resolved so that the protocol is a strong protocol and people know about it and you're able to act quickly. Because I did listen to the communications and it was like, oh, and it's because of the status of the wolves, what's going on here with the management of the wolves. Conversation about them. But it's certainly a big issue now. So what's gonna be, what are you gonna do? I mean, you're trying to protect involved. And in this case clearly, you know, I've been with the sheriff, he gets a call, he's supposed to go out, he's supposed to respond. So it seems like the protocols need to be much stronger, but the policy, the bigger issue, of course, is wolf policy. And obviously that's what Jim's speaking to. And so that's the case that's being made there. I hope that we go away from this today with at least one thing resolved, and that is the communications with law enforcement and those protocols. The wolf policy issue and the Endangered Species Act issue obviously is going to be a longer term conversation, and Jim's been in it a lot of years, so, you know, and he can tell us a lot of stuff, but it's not stuff that I have, you know, look. And I'm actually understanding the dynamic, I knew that before, but the wolf policy issue has to be dealt with, and everyone has to be a participant in that one way or the other. And I don't think that, you know, as a result of this incident, the wolves are gonna be, delisted or anything like that, so.
Well, this particular wolf, that if you know anything about visualization, that very act habitualized those wolves to a certain extent, and the experts that studied and known or world-renowned say that the next time that they encounter a human being, they will be more aggressive. So we've got a problem on our hands with that. All of you people, read the book The Real Wolf by Will Graves and read it. It's all scientifically backed, it's good data, and it's the truth. It's not a bunch of fairy tales. And Mr. Kurz, my question to you would be, why? What motivated you?
I'd appreciate it if he wouldn't, because we had just gone in there, hiked the site, found that it was a rendezvous based on the evidence that we saw that day, used telemetry gear and pressured them to see if we could get them in a similar manner to us, and that didn't. We monitored them on the telemetry. We got, basically, you can tell from the strength of your signal how close you are to them. So we could turn the signal about 100 notches to the right or left from where the actual yards of where they were, and just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. They paralleled us and then headed up and over the hill silently. We never heard a peep, never saw them, didn't see anything. So based on that, we felt it was defensive behavior and not aggressive behavior. Once we found the rendezvous site, the evidence of pups, a couple little pieces of entrails about 18 inches long, looked like it was probably some rabbit fur, a tin can that had tooth marks in it there, obviously from, we determined it was a rendezvous site, and they were just trying to warn that person away from the area and escort her into the distance. She felt unsafe continuing down the trail by herself. Took refuge in the tree and asked for assistance.
So Matt, is she trained to deal with confrontations with wolves?
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
I appreciate the answer, but I would like an answer to the question. Not a long drawn out what the wolves were doing there.
Oh, right.
The question
So-
was, basically, why did you tell Steve Brown not to go? The answer was, well, I really didn't tell him that. Not only did you tell me that, you used a failed threat, yeah, you did, of $100,000 fine and prison. You told me that you were instructed to advise me that this could be construed as endangerment to whatever federal species. I wasn't the only person there. There were 2 other law enforcement officers there, and there were 2 people from a news crew. That's exactly what you said. I would appreciate an answer, because I'm a little upset by that. There's no way I would do that to you. There's no way I would do that to another law enforcement officer, threaten somebody with a fine and jail time.
I felt that it was a threat intended that way in any way, shape, or form.
Okay?
It was intended to advise you of what I knew of how the Endangered Species Act worked, for you to be aware of what it could be perceived as. I did not ask you not to go or
Here's the
to
perception.
stay out of the.
$100,000 fine with a maximum prison term of 1 year in jail. That's a good perception.
Like I said,
That's exactly what you said.
I apologize if you felt it was a threat. It was not intended that way. It was just to provide you with the knowledge that I didn't know you had.
So,
You know, well,
Go ahead,
this is
Frank.
where we're at. I mean, we could do this all day. I mean, just put the shoe on the other foot. Somebody goes out and shoots your 2 wolves, and you guys wanna deal with that. I'm sure all of you in this room are gonna wanna deal with that. Well, we'll just tell you, we got it handled, don't worry about it. Person that shot him, we whisked him away. It's okay, you don't need to know anything. You know what I'm saying? How's that gonna go over in your guys' world? It's not, you know, you're gonna say, no, this is ours, you know, this is what we gotta work together. Simple thing. We tell you, you continue to come into my county, then I'm gonna have all of you leave. I'll make you leave. It's the same thing what you're doing when you kind of imply a threat to us. We know the law, we are the cops.
Like I said, definitely did not mean it to be said in a threatening manner or anything like that. I was just trying to provide some knowledge that I didn't know you had. Tell you what we knew about the situation. I kind of walked you through the telemetry thing while we were there. We talked about what we saw on the trail.
Come on.
Look,
Frustrating.
We're not,
This
we're,
is
we're not gonna get
frustrating.
anywhere.
No.
We're not gonna get anywhere.
No, we're not.
The
But I
thing
just-
is,
What
the
I'd
thing
like to say one
is
more
that,
thing, and go ahead, and I'll finish it.
so. Okay, they have to look out for public safety, period, end of story. Okay, I don't care if it's a unicorn, a grizzly bear, a wolf, or whatever it may be, okay? This group has to look out for public safety. That's gonna be number one, period. Okay, so whatever we take away from this, and again, this lady was, she was safe. Okay, so there was a plan that was instituted somehow, and she was, a lot of nuances came about that made that happen. A helicopter that was able to be called in, other things. Okay, we gotta determine, is this gonna work for little girl and her mom trail? Is the same thing going to work? Are we going to be able to save from whatever danger it may be, whatever animal it may be? And that's where you, as agencies, have to communicate with our sheriff's department, period. Okay, when you know something, when you know, hey, we just got a call, somehow, the law enforcement gets called, and you're getting called, hey, we need to call the county sheriff, let them know what's going on. We need to describe the situation to them, and we need to figure out what is going to be the plan. And that plan, the very first thing is, we need to make sure that people are safe.
Okay.
I have a question though.
Go ahead, Chris.
Steve, you're asserting, the guy told you something, you're kinda in denial over it. I'm wondering myself, to actually improve the part we're trying to improve that Andy was talking about without getting too emotional about it. And that is, what is it that you do? This gentleman was the guy today because of the communication he made to you. And so my question is, how does that work between state, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Matt? It sounded like you were playing your role. I mean, you had a protocol, and Sheriff Rogers said that. I'm just wondering if just this one statement, because I have to tell you, on more than one occasion, I've had a county employee make a statement to somebody that it wasn't something that was our policy. And if that was the case, and that's all we have going here, then I think it needs to be dealt with in that way. The bigger issue, of course, is what I was saying before, is that if we have wolves in the woods, and we're trying to protect their location, and et cetera, and their safety, how does that work with the general public? And I think that's what Andy's saying. And so we need to know how that works. I mean, certainly with law enforcement, we can't have law enforcement, and I feel for what you're saying here, go out to investigate something and say, stand down. That's not the way it works in any way, shape, or form, and especially if there's a threat that they're, threat to be thrown in jail. I think that our officers know what that means, and so they went forward and did what they needed to do. Question that still hasn't been answered for me though is that and I was looking at that a few minutes ago, is that the person, the victim themselves, had a story to tell too. And I didn't know whether they were trained, I didn't know what their story was and how that was dealt with, with wolves. It might not make any matter, because a lot of the people in this room don't really care about any of that. They care about the fact that there's wolf packs in the woods. And that's a threat to their way of life. That's a bigger issue that appears that Jim wants to talk about. But this incident where somebody says something to our law enforcement officers that may make them step back and not do what they need to do at a particular time.
So, Chris, I think what you're talking about is, well, what's the protocol? So you had a search and rescue, the outcome was good, and the federal and state agencies go out there and they're the experts on behavior, they're the experts on this particular species. So as a process, Frank, you had mentioned earlier, you wanted to be, your understanding was is that you would accompany the federal and state agencies when they went to do the follow-up work on this. I think that's what I heard you say.
It would eliminate it all.
Matt, if I could
We do
interrupt
that
you.
now.
Yeah. I wish I would've had you out there with us when we did the hiking. We should have
You're kind
coordinated
of
on that
rough
end.
track without talking about before the incident.
Oh, before.
And the reason I am is because I think that this issue's sort of being addressed, but we're not getting right to it, and that is, the public's out there, and the sheriff doesn't know the wolf's there. The public doesn't know the wolf's there, and so, and yet, I mean, you guys got a pretty good idea where the wolves are.
Some.
Right? Cool.
Some.
And so-
Generally.
Yeah, so what we've got is this potential threat in the woods that, only a few people seem to know about. And even the protocol itself, during or after, has to include something like that. It's like, sheriff gets called, he's gonna respond according to the protocol. And, it's like, there's wolves present, and we also know what wolves do or don't do, and we know we have the authority to go do that because something's being threatened. Most I'm saying is that people that are out there don't have a cell phone that works, so they can't make that call. They're not gonna make the call. They're gonna be approached by wolves and based on descriptions of is that you can keep from getting hurt, but a lot of the people, number one, don't know about it, number two, like they say, they don't have a cell phone. The sheriff wasn't gonna be able to respond to somebody that was out there, and wasn't the threat there, somebody got hurt. But I think that's a part of that whole thing, so the protocol after might work okay, in this case, but the protocol before, and that's being prepared for this kind of thing, because we have more wolves in the woods.
So I think the before piece is what Greg just talked about, Chris. And that's, getting some signs, which
Right.
we had started working on earlier, and we're putting a lot more effort into that right now to inform the public.
But you're not gonna inform the public that there's a bunch of pups out there with a rendezvous site, are you?
So,
No.
so in this particular case, the recommendation that I got was that these wolves, this was a defensive position and there was no threat right now. There are other places where you have carnivores where in other instances, let's say you have a grizzly bear, you know that they're along a trail system, they temporarily close the trail, they put signs up. I was up at Glacier, we couldn't hike on certain trails because the grizzlies were there. And then they had people monitoring that. In this circumstance, I was informed that that's not what's going on. The area is still safe for the public.
Okay, but who said? Who says it's safe for the public?
So I'm looking for these guys for input for that. Because if there's decisions upon closing trailheads and area closures and stuff like that, these are the folks that are gonna provide that detailed information.
So, how many people have ever been killed in the lower 48 states by wolves? Not that many, right? I mean,
Like,
less than 10?
like
That's
I
less
have
than
not
100.
heard of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Modern times is 0.
But, okay,
Well, we're
So-
gonna, I'll contest that,
Well, he said lower 48,
the lower 48.
yeah.
When we had the sheriff, communications officer debrief us on what happened, You know, the first thing that hit my mind, craters of the moon. You guys know about that. National Mall, Southern Idaho, 4 years ago, 2 ladies and 2 dogs disappeared. Same thing happened. U.S. Fish and Wildlife went in there and intimidated local law enforcement to stay down. They sealed off the area. The federal judge came in and it was rumored that the wolves had killed these 2 ladies and 2 dogs. Same scenario, I'm thinking. I don't want that to happen in Okanogan County. I don't want somebody to tell us that our law enforcement people are gonna be intimidated to back off and then the wolf gets protected once again.
So I'm gonna get back to my question of who says it's safe? Okay, so if I don't know anything about wolves, I don't know that it's safe, I don't know that it's not safe, I'm gonna go climb a tree, right? I'm gonna be stuck in the tree because if they're in a rendezvous site and they're in a defensive posture and they're trying to usher me into the woods, and they're sitting there and I'm gonna die of hypothermia, whatever it may be. So what I'm saying is, as biologists, as wolf people, you know what wolves may or may not, right? But as the general public, and not growing up in the country and being around animals and stuff like that, I may or may not know what they're gonna do. So, now you're stuck in a sap phone. And they're stuck in a tree because you got wolves that are, going in and out from this rendezvous site, trying to get her out of the woods, get him or her out of the woods. Maybe that's all they are trying to do. But they're stuck in the tree because they didn't know what to do. And that is the part where, this educational piece and this trying to trust everybody. I mean, we can ask for caller data. So the state, Fish and Wildlife, Donnie, correct me if I'm wrong, will give the county commissioners the caller data.
Yeah, we'll send over a release that you get the data and then the data turns on.
Right. Now, it's blacked out during Denny,
Not for counties.
not for county. Okay, so, as a county, we would know where these were. Obviously, there's the data protection, but at least our sheriff would, if something weird went on, we'd say, hey, look here.
And for the ones that have active callers and the packs that we know about, I think that teeing off of your awareness piece, so yes, and we will get you the form for the caller. There's a couple things, I'm gonna step back, just shut me up if I talk too long. There is the part about the safety side. Everybody has their own dial inside of when they feel threatened. And it may differ between you and I or anybody in this room. And it's up to that person to really sound the alarm. If they feel threatened, then they need to sound their personal alarm. And again, it may be very different. On the proactive side, somebody saw a cow elk's ears lay down the first time he got too close to a calf. And that was the first time you've ever seen that. So your county is adjusting now to wolves on the landscape and raising this awareness that you were all talking about, trailheads and those kinds of things, of the kinds of things you might expect from wolves if you do get too close. The barking or the wolves making themselves present, trying to usher you out of the area, so that your local public knows that. And so the caller data, well, it seems pretty tantalizing that it helps discover that. The reality is it's a caller or two for each pack, for the ones that we even know about, and for the packs that have the callers. And the rendezvous sites can be anywhere within the pack territory. And so that level of awareness about wolf, just like people know now very well, elk behavior and moose behavior and black bear behavior, raising that awareness. And then folks, I heard a lot of references to kind of Montana, folks also becoming aware of, hey, here in your county are wolves that we know about, this is their territory, and there may be others nearby also. And so beyond, just like when you go into Montana, have that self-awareness.
So, back to the blackout though, if you have an incident, everything goes black.
So the state has State Department of Fish and Wildlife has a data sharing program, and it's geared around livestock producers that have overlap with wolves. And during the denning period where the wolves are on their den site, that period of time is blacked out, turned off for producers, but counties have access to that data.
Or sheriff.
Yeah, county government. My experience with wolf stuff is a lot of this is built on relationships, the people side of it. And I'm hearing loud and clear the need for greater coordination, Fed's office, county commissioners, Forest Service, and this, we're happy to do that with the state. When we have a situation where it's one of those that kind of, an issue comes up, where, just like you heard the sheriff talking about when him and Sergeant Christensen would communicate on a livestock depredation, we can also sit down, I think, outside of this probably, where we can have a cup of coffee, get to know each other a little bit better, develop those relationships, start sketching together what those other items are when we do the quick calls and who those calls are to. And that way we have an opportunity to kind of hear your needs, the sheriff's needs, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service needs, Forest Service needs, State Fish and Wildlife, make sure we're getting all of our needs met, and we come up with a game plan for how to move forward. And not just for these kind of public safety events, but other things we need to coordinate on also.
I agree. I think from our end of it, we need a little coordination as well, through the protocols in these situations. I'm just hoping that, the sheriff's office actually has a much better understanding of the wolf issue and what it all means to us here, because they need to understand that more. And then we all probably have to understand better the protocols for responding. That's outside of the policy that you're talking about. And I just think that this incident right here, I got a little bit of both in when I heard it from the sheriff's department, because I heard some from you all, that, why is it like this in Okanogan County? And this conversation right here, I think needs to be included in the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department needs to understand it, not whether you agree with it or not, because I don't think that was the issue when you responded. I think it was public safety, am I correct?
Well, we're responding no matter what. I mean, it's simple, but like we said, no tells us to stand down. I mean, that's just the way it works. It's our county.
So, and that's the message that just came through, and I think that whether or not this gentleman here made a threat, and it sounds like he did, we know that that threat doesn't mean much to us. That's what I'm getting out of it. Is that right?
Well,
Is the sheriff's department gonna get arrested for responding the way they did? By somebody from the federal level?
What I'm getting at is just working together on this stuff. I mean, we've worked with, and the trouble is, we're at county level. As you get to the state, it gets a lot more bureaucratic. When you get to their level, we work with all, well, not all of you, but we work, when we had the marijuana grows, Steve and these guys were taking out the grows. Hell, we did everything. The DEA was involved. We brought the federal, some of the grower protected squirrels or something. I mean, we've always done this. What happened on this one? I don't know. I know why. You know it too. It involved the wolf, and it was gonna go crappy for everybody, press-wise. It was gonna look bad. That's what happened. This has been a grid calm issue. We would not be sitting here. You guys know it. We all know it. That's all. Issue, that's 3.
Okay. Would you please come up? He's U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I'm not opening this up to the public. He has a right to.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Brad Thompson again. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Deputy State Supervisor. I work with Greg, although out of the Lacey office. I am responsible for Greg and everyone else working in our state and the endangered species work that we do as our agency. I've sat here and I've listened to this conversation very closely, trying to figure out what we can do as an agency to improve the position and reflect upon our behavior and contribution to the discussion leading to the necessity for this meeting today. And I'd just like to share a couple of thoughts to build off upon what has been discussed and add some additional insight. I'm terribly sorry that we find ourselves here today, and I want to start with that. Offer an apology on behalf of our program within the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Are there things that we could have done better in hindsight? Absolutely. And I own up to that. I'm responsible for that and work, including Greg, to try to improve the situation. Do we recognize that we are going to be dependent on a partnership amongst many people here and others not represented today to be successful in the future, for coordination if we find ourselves unfortunately in a similar or somewhat similar situation? Absolutely. The mission of our organization starts with working with others. Don't think we did our best in this case, and we need to do better and constantly look back and in future situations and learn from the past and not repeat mistakes. So I have to say that first. I'd like to apologize to the Sheriff's Office if there was even the perception of a threat through conversation with our folks in the field. That is not working with others if even people perceive, let alone it's true, that we threaten people. And there's time when it comes to working with where you have to use the information available and do your best to make a decision. And there should be a short circuiting in certain situations, even if it's perceived human safety, to just go, share information, and make the decision, and figure out later if it truly was. And apologies later, but always err on the side of the human safety. I think we did that in this instance when we received the call with our agency and Greg. We'll let the transcripts lay where they lay, but we feel like we did that. When we were first contacted regarding the need for a helicopter, we immediately said yes. Were there other things that we were talking about involving the Sheriff's Office? When we encountered each other in the field, there's room for improvement, as I said on that. Absolutely. We're committed to working with the state. We're pretty short-staffed when it comes to capabilities. Despite that, is there room for improvement collectively about how to inform the newcomer on the landscape here in Washington and Wolves? Absolutely. We're interested in figuring out a way to do that, recognizing we're all going to be coming at it from our own knowledge of what people we think should know versus what people really, everybody's internal dial, as Donnie said, about even if they have that information, what they might do in a situation they find themselves in the field where any one of us knows, all of a sudden other things take over in terms of how your body responds, how you think, what you say, differently in action compared to when you're in training. I don't care if it's a CPR event or something else. It's great to have training, but in the human, and you've got to take your training and do something with that. So I just want to again thank you for the opportunity here to contribute to the conversation and say that there's a lot of room for improvement. The recognition, if it hasn't been stated already by me, needs to be stated that issues of public safety, there's a number of different people here with authorities, including the Sheriff's Office, and it's not for our agency to say you cannot exercise your authority, especially when it comes to public safety. I would hope that going forward, a lot of this is what I'm listening to is we either don't yet have enough experiences, positive, certainly to in these situations with wolf management where we've necessary, and I'm seeing that as something that I would like improvement on and willingness to contribute to that, and hope that we'll be doing with that with instances going forward. I hope not to have this type of incident where we have to go through it 10 times, not looking forward to that. But part of the training is going through that together, knowing what the plan is, having buy-in from everybody that we really need to come up with a robust plan, and then communication, even in the absence, hopefully long intervals between instances where we're ready to go, just like we would do with an oil spill response, or anything else. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
The other thing that I would like to point out is that you have 4 gentlemen in the room here that work for state Fish and Wildlife. Okay, you have 2 enforcement officers back there that are your boots on the ground if something happens. So your direction to them in the federally listed areas is critical. So when they're having to go, oh gosh, we need to call, you know, the US Fish and Wildlife to figure out what's going, you know, what we need to do, well, we have the protocols to follow. I mean, those are the things that now after this, that you need to look at and go, okay, we have a partner who does our boots on the ground work, and we need to make sure that they know, hey, if there is any threat to personal safety, you know, this is the protocol that you use moving forward. I think that's important.
Agreed.
Good.
We do,
I agree with that, you know, the local guys like Dan that live in our communities, work with us every day, you know, they bend over backwards to cooperate with the sheriff. And so when it goes out of their hands into a higher level, you know, we hate to see what has happened because it's a reflection on the whole department. And, I just hope that people that are in higher places can appreciate the fact that these people that live among us, the work that they do every day.
significant contributors to the resolve capacity, the local folks, whether they be the sheriff's office, are easily recognizable and are having greater frequency opportunities in terms of developing trust with the community. We need to do our part as an agency, both law enforcement, Jim's here for them, with me, endangered species, to work with them, to empower them, to provide them the information so that they can do their job and do the job collectively for us to build the trust that we so desperately need to improve as governments and other entities working with the public we serve. Agreed. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
One more thing and I'm done. Just because, I mean, there's been names, a lot of stuff's gone on in here today. Talk about the game guy that was making some of the calls. In his defense too, I mean, I don't know what goes on, but like I said, there's a lot of hierarchy here. He's just a guy on the street doing his job. We are definitely not throwing him under the bus. Because I don't know how it works. You said it, it's better, you know, it created a nightmare because it was a wolf. So I just want to make sure everybody, don't throw this guy under the bus, not him, but the game guy for doing his job. You know, I don't want to see a scapegoat. Oh, well, one guy's going to pay the price for this. No, this starts at the top and goes, okay. Until you get that resolved, or we get it figured out with the damn wolves and the federal laws and all that. I just want to say that right here.
And that's where I was going with the US Fish and Wildlife, making sure that the people that are working here know that, hey, this, you know, this is the life, it's more important, this is what we're gonna do.
Kudo to Jill. Sorry. She did a good job. I'm done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, appreciate everybody.
One little thing, I talked too much. Commissioner Dietrich, to your comment. The other thing I've learned from the wolf stuff is this is all combined. And so this may be about this incident, but it is a wolf thing, and it's not just this county, it's the entire state. And so you made with livestock stuff, and absolutely this touches that. Because we have producers back there and other public, and for them, it's not just this isolated incident. And so again, just kind of that spirit that we have here, getting together and talking through some protocols and that kind of stuff, and knowing that it's more than just this issue, it touches every other wolf piece that's out there.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. We appreciate the opportunity to go over this, and yes, hopefully this does not, well, it will end this way, and hopefully nobody else gets
I think we're good about it.